Welcome, my lovely lilies, to the Shikawan Totob, the nation of the four winds. Please sit by the fire, for today we have a brand new entry to the nation.
My grandparents are big holiday people. We split up our holidays. What I mean by that is, we alternate where to go each holiday. They come down for Easter, we go to Michigan for the 4th of July. They come down for Thanksgiving, we go up for Christmas. The next year we go up for Easter, they come for 4th of July. We go up for Thanksgiving, they come down for Christmas. Well, the summer before my freshman year of high school, I was a month shy of turning 14. We went to my grandparents for the 4th of July. They had a huge day planned, starting with t-shirt making, followed by a cookout at their church, finished off with a night of fireworks downtown. Their church was located just behind a playground/park, so the main cookout area was set up there for the younger kids. This particular year, my best friend Lexi accompanied my family up to Michigan. Anyway, my uncle and grandpa went on a little walk around the park, and my dad was in one of the park pavilions with my mom, while Lexi and I went to play on the monkey bars. Quite literally, out of nowhere, this old man comes up to us and starts talking to us.
Nice day for a picnic, isn't it?
I shrugged, but Lexi decided to strike up a conversation with the dude. She's always been the more social one. "Oh yeah, but it's a little hot out for my taste," she said. The guy looked her and I both up and down, and I promise he licked his lips as he said,
"That's not the only hot thing around here."
Freaking out, I glanced around the park trying to find my 6'6", 300-pound uncle to scare the creeper away. He was all the way on the other side of the park. My dad apparently seeing the guy, and my expression came over. He's not as big as my uncle, but just as formidable. "Hey, man, maybe you should leave them alone," he said.
"I'm just making conversation,"
the old guy told him. "Yeah, I get that, but I really prefer if you didn't make conversation with my two 13-year-old daughters." Obviously, Lexi wasn't his daughter, but I digress.
"Oh, relax, dude. I wasn't gonna do anything to him."
"Look, I really hate to involve anyone else in this." He started reaching for his cell phone in his pocket. "Leave them alone, okay?" My grandmother came over at this point and started saying basically the same stuff. This might sound funny, but my dad's mom is one rocking old lady. She's stronger than any old lady I've ever met, and she's got energy out the wazoo. To top it all off, she can scream and holler like nobody's business, and make you feel 6 inches tall in about 30 seconds.
"Relax,"
the old guy said.
"We're all children of God in God's house. I was just trying to enjoy the spirit and talk to these girls. I wasn't gonna do anything."
Finally, my uncle came back from his walk, and my dad called for him. When the old guy saw the size of my uncle, he held up his hands, muttered an apology, and took off before anyone could say another word. So, creepy old guy at the park, let's not meet. Ever again. I work the night shift at a hotel, so I've had a ton of weirdos come through, but this is the most recent. Everything started off normally. Usually once I clock in at 11 p.m., I can just sit at the desk and I only see a few people. I'm a loner and I prefer it this way. Anyways, about 2:30 in the morning, a guy in his 30s comes down and stands at the front desk. I've worked this job for 5 years, so I can pick out the weirdos pretty well, and I knew right away something was off about him. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me. So I asked, "Can I help you?" He mumbles something, and all I can make out is the word coffee. I tell him there's fresh coffee available in the breakfast area behind him. He turns to look, then looks back at me, confused. "Do you have some coffee I can take to my room?" My first thought is, this guy is drunk as heck, and I told him he could take a cup of the already made coffee, or I could give him a couple of packs to take to his room. He wanted the packs, so I grabbed a couple and gave it to him, hoping that's all he wanted, and I could go back to watching TV. No such luck. He kept standing in front of me, looking at the packets of coffee, and confused. Okay, I've had enough of this drunk guy. So I walk over to the other side of the desk and I stare at the TV, ignoring him. After a few minutes, he wanders into the breakfast area and stares at the pots of coffee. Then he wanders over to the fruit, the cereal, and the yogurt, then back to the coffee, just staring at everything and walking in slow circles. After a while of that, he stops looking at the food, and then looks at the ground, then starts muttering to himself while he's walking in circles. Now he's officially freaking me out. He's at least 6 inches taller than me, 50 pounds heavier, and I'm the only one on this shift. I start thinking of escape options like locking myself in the laundry room, running to the gas station, etc. I've had to do this a few times when things got really bad, so I try to plan ahead when someone is giving me bad vibes. About 15 minutes after he starts walking in circles, he heads down the hall, still muttering. I relax, happy he's gone to bed to pass out, and I'll have the lobby to myself again. Probably 5 minutes later, I glance out the front door, and he's right there staring at me, smoking a cigarette, and still talking to himself. I'm starting to think he's high on drugs, and that scares me enough to grab a pair of scissors when he's not looking and hold them down by my side. I start to think about calling the police, but what for? He hasn't done anything. So I decide to wait it out and hope he goes to bed soon, since it was after 3 a.m. at this point. For the next 30 minutes, he walks up and down the halls, through the lobby and outside, then comes back in through the back door and loops around again. The third time he walks by me, still talking, I was terrified and I was on the verge of saying forget it and calling 911 anyway, just to have someone else there with me. Just then an old woman walks up to the desk and asks me to call her a cab. She has no idea how happy I was to see her. I call her a cab and start chatting with her. Very unusual for me. Just to keep her in the lobby. The weirdo comes around the corner for the 4th time, and the old woman tells him to pack his stuff. They're leaving because he woke her up, and she couldn't go back to sleep. Apparently this old lady is the weird guy's mom, and I feel much better knowing he was going to leave as soon as the cab got there. As soon as she told him to pack his stuff, he gets angry. He didn't want to leave. He told her to go back to bed, but she was adamant, and after they argued for a bit, which was awkward for me just standing there watching them, he goes upstairs to pack. She explained to me she could tell that he was getting agitated, and it was time for her to take him home. I talked to her for a while, and she opened up to me and told me her son is schizophrenic, and she's the only one who will take care of him. She told me she just wished someone would take him for just 6 months, like a hospital or something, to get him on his meds and into a good routine. I felt so awful for her. She seemed so tired and hopeless. And I have mental issues myself, so I could relate to the struggle. All of a sudden, the weird guy comes running out demanding to stay, and they start arguing again. Except this time, he sees me watching and focuses on me, storming up to the desk and screaming, "She's going to call the cops! I didn't do anything! Are you going to clean my kitchen?" And other horrible things while I just stood there, stunned. I held up the scissors to defend myself, and his mom screamed, "Stop! Do you hear what you're saying to her?" And he calmed down just as fast as he snapped. The cab pulled up, and as much as I felt sorry for his mom, I was so happy to see them pull away. Well, creepy schizo guy, let's not meet again. So this happened in early July, and it still creeps me out a bit today. I'm a soldier and I live in the barracks on base, since I'm not married and I can't really afford my own place. For security reasons, I will not name the base or its location. It is typically pretty quiet around here, aside for the common parties that happen on the weekends, so this event was pretty surprising to me. Additionally, I work the night shift 4 days a week, from 2 p.m. to midnight, so it's even quieter on most days when I return to my room. This night, however, was the 4th of July weekend. Military gets a 4-day weekend on federal holidays, so the common area was a bit louder on Thursday night, my last work day for the week. To give you a better idea about the layout, the barracks are separated into 4 3-story buildings that share a large concrete common area. Since we obviously can't smoke in our rooms, the common areas have 2 smoking areas. We call them smoke pits, on each side. The smoke pits each consist of a picnic table, a grill, and a large trash bin, covered by an awning to block out the rain. The smoke pits are the site of most of the parties that occur on the weekends, mainly the one furthest from my building. I had gotten out of work early, so it was around 10 when I got to the barracks, and made my way to my room. As per usual on nights that don't have work days following them, there was a party at the pit furthest from my building, where most of the people outside were at. However, there was one person at my building's pit. Originally, I assumed he was just out there to smoke and wasn't up for the party. What was strange, however, was that he had no lit cigarette, no vape, and wasn't on his phone. He just sat there, dressed in blue jeans and a red hoodie with his hood up. It was the middle of July in the South, so this was a bit strange, but the rooms are pretty much perpetually cold during the summer. We don't control the AC, and the barracks NCOs just blast the crap on high at like 65 degrees for the entire summer, for whatever reason. So I figured he might have just stepped out to warm up. He sat at the table with his arms in his front pockets, and his head hanging. Wanting to smoke, I stood at the opposite side of the table and lit a cigarette. The guy didn't speak or even move for the entire time I was there. He just sat there, blankly staring into his lap. I didn't think much of it and just made my way to my room, changed, and just patrolled YouTube for a while. It's important to note a few things here. Each room houses 2 soldiers, and the doors automatically lock when closed. The only people with the key are the unit headquarters and the room's residents themselves. In the event that a resident loses their key, they have to call to get someone to unlock it every time they need to get in, until the key is replaced. Additionally, my room is located on the 2nd floor of the building, and is a bit tucked away around the back. There is next to no traffic outside of my room. Lastly, my side of the room has the only window and is where the door is, so I can hear when someone is rarely passing by my room. Finally, my roommate worked an odd shift from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., and I wasn't too sure what days he worked. Also, the room is very dark and I cannot see if my roommate is asleep in the room when I first enter, so I close the door quietly by keeping the knob turned as it closes. This is very important to remember. He wasn't home at this time. At 2 a.m. I hunkered down to get some sleep. Before I dozed off, however, I could hear a shuffling outside. I peeked out the window and could see some obviously inebriated girl tripping over herself to get to her room. I knew the girl lived in the room next to mine, so I didn't see a need to help her since she was literally right there. But I listened for a while until I heard her enter her room. About 10 minutes later, I heard someone walking toward my door and stopped. I figured it was my roommate getting home, but I couldn't hear the obvious sound of someone unlocking the door. For a long moment it was silent. Then I heard the sound of my door slowly opening. Instantly I sat up and I looked at the foot of my bed, where the door was. There was no sound of the doorknob turning, and no click of the lock. The door was just slowly being pushed open, as if someone was trying to enter very quickly, which wasn't like my roommate. After the door was fully open, someone not in uniform walked in. At first I didn't recognize who it was, until I noticed the red hoodie. I gasped and screamed, "Get out!" The man jumped and darted out of the room. I jumped out of bed and ran to the door. The guy had jumped over the rail and into the bushes below, and was running across the common area. Immediately I called the MPs, and they arrived within minutes. A few of them did a search of the area, while the rest made trips around the rooms to check on everyone. The girl's room next to mine was also not closed. They eventually found the guy in a storage room of another one of the barracks buildings. A few weeks passed until I found out the whole story. Apparently this guy wasn't even a soldier, but was an ex of the girl who lived next to me. Prior to that night, the ex didn't know what room she lived in, and had attempted to follow her to her room after she had finished partying. He knew she didn't have a roommate at the time, so he figured he would be able to prey on her without anyone noticing. I don't know how this guy got onto base, since there's always an ID check at the gate and the guy didn't even have identification on him. Fortunately for the girl, in my attempt to be quiet, I accidentally not closed my door completely, and the guy mistook my room for hers. What's worse is that the girl hadn't closed her door either, so had the guy not mixed up the rooms, he would have broken into hers, while she was extremely drunk and likely unconscious. While I'm fortunate for the girl who was safe, I fear for what might have happened had I been asleep when the creep was in my room. Typically, the barracks are supposed to be safe places for troops to sleep, and things of this nature don't typically happen, but this goes to show you that you need to be careful no matter where you are. So, creepy civilian in the red hoodie, let's not meet again. So I live in a pretty small city. Population is about 10,000, and it's in Georgia, so nothing interesting really happens here. Well anyways, on July 4th, 2012, me and my family were at my aunt's house, and they live off a busy highway, but they live down a long gravel road in the middle of nowhere. So we were shooting off fireworks, just hanging out, and suddenly we hear somebody in the woods by the house. So we all look, and it's black outside, so we can't see anything till we were about 5 feet away. And this guy comes up sweating and very shaky. He's talking very fast, asking my uncle for a ride to his house, which is only 15 minutes away. And my uncle, also nervous, says sure. Then my uncle says, "Let me get my keys." So he goes inside and calls the cops and gets a gun, and then lets the man into the car to drive him home. He was stalling, waiting for the cops, and once they pull up, the guy tries to run, but falls and gets arrested. Next day, we find out he was holding a family hostage. He was also wanted for grand theft auto and attempted murder. So you can picture how scary this was, since we live in such a small and boring town. Well, grand theft auto attempted murder guy, let's not meet. Ever.
Bye.